Welcome to our deep dive into the world of adulting. You know,
Oh, I like that.
Thanks. I thought it was kind of catchy, right?
Yeah, it is.
So it seems like a lot of our listeners are really trying to wrap their heads around adult friendships and, all the things from our childhood that still affect us as adults.
Right.
So this time, we're going kind of deep with a few different sources.
Go ahead.
There's this fascinating Psychology Today article all about adult friendships and this concept of overindulgence.
Okay.
And then we've got a guide from Reform perspective on how to basically survive adulthood.
Survive, yeah.
And then just to shake things up a bit,
Okay.
we've even got some snippets from, believe it or not, a YouTube video transcript
Right.
that's all about the anti-vaccine movement.
Interesting mix there.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all over the place, but kind of connected.
Yeah, it really does touch on all those anxieties and questions that, pop up when you become an adult.
Exactly. When do we actually become adults?
Mhm.
Because I was reading this thing in the Psychology Today article about emerging adulthood.
Yeah.
And it seems like those traditional milestones, getting married, buying a house, having a stable career,
Yeah,
people in their 20s aren't doing that as much anymore.
it's true. I mean, a lot of those milestones are happening way later for most people now.
Right.
Which is why we have this extended period of just figuring things out and a lot of uncertainty.
But it's not just a personal choice, right?
No, not at all.
It feels like society's changing too.
Yeah, definitely.
Everything's more expensive
Yes.
and jobs are different now than they used to be.
It's all contributing to this longer transition period.
So it's we're stuck in this in-between phase for longer now.
Yeah.
But does that actually make it easier?
Not really.
So the article was talking about how hard it is to figure out who you are and what you want.
Yeah.
And you don't have those traditional markers anymore.
Exactly. And there's more freedom now.
Sure.
Sure,
Yeah.
and more flexibility.
Mhm.
But there's also more pressure to succeed.
Right.
And it's easy to feel lost.
Like a drift.
Yeah, exactly, adrift. And without clear expectations from society, it's tough to know if you're on the right track.
It's we're trying to navigate without a map.
Right.
And speaking of navigating, this Psychology Today article had this really interesting question
Okay.
about whether our adult relationships, especially friendships, are kind of repeats of our past relationships.
Interesting.
Do we keep making the same mistakes?
Mhm.
It even suggested that stuff from our childhood, issues we didn't deal with,
Oh, wow.
can stick with us and mess up our adult relationships.
What do you think about that?
I think it's true, right? Haven't you ever felt you're repeating patterns?
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
I think our early experiences, especially with our families, really shape how we understand relationships.
Uh-huh.
Like how we deal with intimacy, arguments, what we expect from other people. It's totally natural that those patterns would carry over into our adult relationships. Sometimes we don't even realize it's happening.
It's we're drawn to familiar dynamics, even if they're not good for us.
Right. Yeah.
Trying to rewrite an old script, but with new actors.
Exactly. But the real question is, can we figure out these patterns and actually break free?
And that's where self-awareness comes in, right?
Yeah.
Being able to see those patterns and understand how they might be affecting our friendships, our romantic relationships, all of it.
Recognizing those patterns, that's the first step.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can start to choose who you let into your life and what kind of relationships you build.
Be more intentional.
Exactly. And that leads us to another point from the Psychology Today article.
Okay.
Overindulgence.
Overindulgence, spoiling your kids.
Well, it suggests that some parenting styles can actually make it harder for kids to become adults.
Oh, interesting.
They break it down into 3 types.
Okay.
Giving too much, over-nurturing, and what they call soft structure.
So too many toys, too much coddling, not enough rules.
Yeah. And each of those can get in the way of kids learning those important life skills they need to navigate the adult world.
Can you give me an example? How does that play out?
Sure. Imagine a kid who gets everything they want.
Yeah.
Never has to work with anything, never deals with disappointment. They might have a hard time budgeting or being patient as adults.
Makes sense.
Or think about a kid who's always protected from challenges.
Never allowed to fail.
Yeah. They might not develop the resilience and problem-solving skills they need to handle setbacks.
So it's not just about material things, it's about those inner skills.
Right. Self-reliance, resilience, dealing with disappointment. Those are crucial.
And the article's saying that even though loving, supportive parents are super important, there needs to be a balance
Yes,
between giving kids what they need and letting them develop those skills.
exactly. It's about setting them up for success as adults.
It's that advice from the Reformed Perspective Guide about seeking guidance from people who are older and wiser, right? Like realizing we don't have to figure everything out on our own.
Having mentors, whether it's family, teachers, friends who are a bit further along, they can offer so much support and advice and a different perspective.
It's like building a support system to help you navigate all the uncertainty of adulthood.
Exactly.
But it makes you wonder, is all the traditional advice about adulting still relevant?
Yeah, good question.
I mean, the rules seem to be changing all the time.
Right.
Like, what even is adulting anymore?
I think both sources are saying that adulting isn't one size fits all.
Right.
It's about adapting to the changes, learning as you go, and figuring out what works for you, while also realizing that society has a big influence.
So true.
And this brings us to something pretty interesting.
Okay.
Remember that YouTube transcript I mentioned?
The one about vaccines.
Yes. That one. It seems like a jump from what we've been talking about.
Yeah, it does.
But I think it connects to adulting in a really important way.
How so?
Well, in a world where we're constantly bombarded with information, it's more important than ever to be discerning,
Right.
to think critically about what we're reading and watching.
Especially when it comes to health decisions.
Absolutely.
I mean, that video really gets into the whole Andrew Wakefield study that caused so much fear and mistrust around the MMR vaccine.
It's amazing how one fraudulent study that was later retracted
I know.
could have such a huge impact on public health.
It shows how dangerous misinformation can be.
Yeah.
And as adults, we have a responsibility to be critical of the information we consume.
We do.
In that video, it actually reveals some shocking things about Wakefield's motives.
Really?
Apparently, he stood to profit from discrediting the MMR vaccine.
That's unsettling.
It's a reminder that information often has an agenda behind it, whether it's for money, political reasons, or personal gain.
So we need to be able to identify those agendas.
Exactly. It's crucial for making good decisions.
And the video also talks about how the media played a role in amplifying the scare.
Yeah, like with sensational headlines and scary images.
Right, creating a sense of panic.
It really shows how important media literacy is these days.
It's not optional anymore. It's essential for navigating all the information that's thrown at us.
It's like we need a filter
Exactly.
to sort through all the noise and figure out what's true.
And developing that filter is an ongoing process.
What's so important?
Yes, for making informed decisions about everything.
Our health, our finances, our relationships.
Everything.
Speaking of finances, let's dive into that practical advice from the Reformed Perspective Guide.
Okay?
You mentioned it covers things like career choices, home ownership, managing money.
It does. And really gets the anxieties that a lot of young people feel about money.
Oh, yeah.
It's like they weren't given the tools to manage their finances.
Especially in a world where everything is so expensive.
Exactly.
I feel like financial literacy is often overlooked.
Yep.
And then suddenly you're expected to know about loans and budgeting and saving for the future.
And nobody taught you how.
Exactly. The guide actually suggests that schools should focus more on practical life skills.
Like personal finance,
Yeah.
alongside traditional academic subjects.
It's about preparing young people for the real world.
Not just for tests and exams.
Right, like actually being able to function.
Exactly.
But it's not all about practical knowledge.
No.
The guide also talks about the importance of contentment.
Contentment.
Yeah, finding joy and fulfillment in simpler things.
I like that.
It challenges this idea that happiness comes from having a lot of stuff.
For keeping up with everyone else.
Yeah.
It encourages a different perspective.
Okay.
Focusing on what really matters.
Like what?
Meaningful relationships, pursuing your passions, giving back to your community.
It's like they're saying true wealth isn't about money.
Right.
It's about something deeper.
Yeah.
And that contentment can actually be freeing
It can. It takes away the pressure to always want more.
and helps you appreciate what you already have.
Absolutely.
Which brings us back to something we were talking about earlier.
Okay.
About how the definition of success is changing.
Mhm.
It's not just about the big house and the fancy car anymore.
I think both the Reformed Perspective Guide and the Psychology Today article are pointing to a shift in values.
Okay.
Success is more about work-life balance, mental well-being, and a sense of purpose.
And that purpose can come from a lot of different things, right?
Yeah.
The Reformed Perspective Guide highlights all sorts of career paths.
Oh, like what?
Traditional professions, creative pursuits, even homemaking.
So much broader now.
It reflects the reality of the modern workforce.
Mhm.
It's not about staying in one career forever anymore.
Yeah, it's about finding work that aligns with your values and skills and interests.
Even if it means creating your own path.
Exactly.
And speaking of creating your own path, the guide also talks about alternative ways of living.
Oh, like what?
Like tiny home contentment.
Tiny homes? I've heard of those.
It's like they're encouraging people to think differently about homeownership.
Yeah, maybe that traditional model doesn't work for everyone.
Right.
It's about finding a living situation that fits your lifestyle and your values.
Not just doing what society expects.
Right, exactly.
You know, this all makes me wonder if we're putting too much pressure on ourselves
In what way?
to achieve all those traditional markers of adulthood.
Like the house, the marriage, the career.
Yeah, exactly. What if chasing those milestones is actually making us more anxious and stressed?
It's a good question.
Maybe we need to rethink what adulting really means.
Maybe we do.
And that brings us back to the importance of friendships
Okay.
and those meaningful connections we build throughout our lives.
Those are so important.
The Psychology Today article really emphasizes that
Yeah.
adult friendships can be just as complex and rewarding as romantic relationships.
They can.
But we don't always give them the same attention.
That's true. We tend to prioritize romantic relationships.
But friendships are so essential.
They are.
They provide support, companionship, and a sense of belonging.
All throughout our lives.
And like we talked about earlier, those friendships can also bring up unresolved issues from the past.
Especially if we're not aware of those patterns.
Right.
We need to approach friendships with the same intentionality and self-awareness that we bring to romantic relationships.
So, like, be mindful of how you feel in those friendships.
Yeah. Notice any red flags, unhealthy dynamics.
Set boundaries when you need to.
It's about surrounding yourself with people who support you.
And uplift you.
Exactly. And recognizing that it's okay to outgrow friendships.
Or realize that a dynamic isn't working anymore.
Right. Holding on to unhealthy friendships can actually hold you back.
You need to recognize that your needs and priorities change.
And your friendship should too.
And speaking of evolving needs and priorities, I want to circle back to the Reformed Perspective Guide
Okay.
and its emphasis on finding meaning and purpose.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like that sense of purpose could really help with the anxieties of adulting.
Absolutely. It can be a powerful antidote.
The guide talks about how we're all created with unique gifts and talents,
Yes.
and that using those gifts to serve others is essential for a fulfilling life.
It's about finding your calling
Right.
and using your gifts to make a difference.
It's like that purpose gives you a compass to navigate the complexities of adulthood.
It gives you direction, motivation,
Yeah.
and a way to make a positive impact.
And that impact can be felt in so many ways, right?
It can.
Our families, our communities, even the wider world.
It's about embracing the responsibility that comes with being an adult,
Not just the practical stuff,
like paying bills and taking care of your home.
but the responsibility to contribute to something bigger, to
Exactly.
leave the world a little better than we found it.
And that contribution doesn't have to be huge.
It can be small acts of kindness.
Supporting a local cause, speaking out against injustice.
Right, just doing what you can.
It's about recognizing that we're all connected.
And our actions have ripple effects.
Yeah.
Our well-being is tied to the health of our communities.
Absolutely.
And this brings me back to something that both the Psychology Today article and the Reformed Perspective Guide talked about.
What's that?
The importance of community support and mentorship.
Yeah.
They both emphasize that we don't have to go through this alone.
We don't. Yeah, it's like weaving a safety net.
Right.
We can learn from those who came before us. Get some good advice. Avoid making the same mistakes.
And it creates a sense of belonging, too.
Exactly. A shared experience.
But it's not just about receiving support.
No, it's about giving back, too.
Being mentors ourselves.
On helping build that network for future generations.
Paying it forward.
Exactly. We all have something to offer, no matter how old we are or what we've been through.
And those connections between different generations.
Yeah, they're so important for building a strong society.
So adulting becomes less about checking off those boxes.
Like getting married, buying a house.
Yeah,
It's more about creating a better community.
that's a good way to put it.
It's realizing that our well-being is tied to the health of the community around us.
It's like shifting from me to we.
And that can be really empowering.
It can.
Even with all the challenges of adulting, we have the power to make things better.
For ourselves and for future generations.
Exactly.
It's a hopeful message.
It is.
It reminds us that we're not alone in this.
And it also highlights how important it is to be active and engaged citizens,
Like using our voices, taking action.
to shape the kind of world we want to live in.
So it's not just about figuring out our own lives.
No, it's about contributing to something bigger.
Making a difference.
And that can look like a lot of different things.
Like what?
advocating for social change, supporting local businesses.
Even just being a good neighbor.
Exactly. Every action, even the small ones,
Yeah,
they have ripple effects.
that's powerful.
It is.
As we wrap up this deep dive into adulting.
It feels like we've discovered so much more than just practical tips.
Right. We went deeper.
We explored how the definition of adulthood is changing, the challenges and opportunities.
And the importance of community, purpose, critical thinking.
It's all connected.
I think the biggest takeaway is that adulting isn't a destination.
It's a journey.
Yeah.
A journey of self-discovery, growth, and connection.
And it's a journey we don't have to make alone.
We have each other, the wisdom of past generations, and the power to create a better future.
So to our listener, we leave you with this.
What does adulting mean to you?
What steps can you take to embrace the challenges and the triumphs of this journey?
And how can you use your unique gifts and perspectives to create a world where everyone can thrive?
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Until next time.
Bye, everyone.
Yeah, you do.
We've been talking a lot about the challenges of adulting.
Yeah, for sure.
But there's also a lot of beauty in it, right?
Absolutely.
Like figuring out who you are, what you want,
Yeah.
building meaningful relationships,
It's about finding your place in the world.
and making a difference.
Exactly.
So to wrap things up,
Yeah.
what are some of your final thoughts for our listeners?
Well, first of all, I want to say that it's okay to not have all the answers.
It's okay to not have it all figured out.
Yeah, exactly. Adulting is a process.
It's a journey.
And it's different for everyone.
Right. There's no one right way to do it.
Nope.
And it's okay to make mistakes along the way.
You're going to mess up sometimes.
It's part of learning and growing.
Yeah, embrace the messiness.
I love that.
And second, don't be afraid to ask for help.
Reach out to people.
Yeah. Find your mentors, your community,
Surround yourself with people who support you.
the people who lift you up and encourage you.
And don't forget to give back, too.
Pay it forward, right?
Yeah, be that mentor for someone else.
Share your wisdom, your experiences.
Even if you don't feel like you have much to offer.
Everyone has something to give.
It's true.
And finally, remember that adulting isn't just about taking care of yourself. It's also about taking care of the world around you.
Making it a better place.
Exactly. Get involved in your community. Speak up for what you believe in. Use your gifts to make a positive impact.
It's about leaving the world a little brighter than you found it.
I love that.
Me too.
So go out there and be the best adult you can be.
Even if that means redefining what adulting means for you.
Exactly.
That's all the time we have for today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
This was fun.
It was great having you. Until next time, everyone.